You're listening to the Youth for Life podcast with Michelle Bauman, Director of Why for Life at Lutherans for Life, where we prepare youth to be gospel-motivated voices for life. Be sure to stick around after today's live recording of our Chats for Life program to find out how you can be live too on our next Youth for Life podcast. Hello and welcome to this edition of the Youth for Life podcast. I have with me a special lady that you actually probably have met before, Rehema Kavugha. Welcome to our podcast. It is good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we are going to talk today a little bit about, well, actually a variety of things about public relations, about stewardship, about the opportunity to give back and the many ways that you can serve others through that opportunity. But as is always the case, we want to start with a prayer. So if you'll please join me. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank and praise you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to use this medium to share your message, to encourage others to be for life. Lord, be with us today as we explore the many ways that you serve us through the vocations of others, and help us to see the possibilities for serving others in this podcast. Thank you so much for our guest speaker. Give her joy in this discussion, and to our listeners, help them to be able to use this information to your glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, I'm going to start off with the very first question, give you an opportunity to kind of introduce yourself. I mentioned that you are the Synod Relations Director at LCEF, but tell us how you got there. Like, how long have you worked there? How did you come to this position? Give us maybe some background.
Well, thank you again so much for having me, Michelle. I just want to start by saying thank you, and to the audience as well. It's great to connect with you all. Whenever I get asked the question of how did I end up here, I always just say Jesus because it makes no sense to me. I'm so grateful for the opportunity that the Lord has led me down this path, and so I just try to follow and heed his voice when asked. But I was born and raised LCMS Lutheran down in the great state of Texas, and grew up with my mom being a Lutheran school teacher, just retired after 40 years in ministry.
Wow.
And yeah, amazing. All at the same school, which you don't hear about all the time. And
No.
so just had her as a prime example. And I can remember wanting to be a teacher since I was about 4 years old and playing school a lot. And so I knew I wanted to go into the ministry, and I had a couple of tragedies and as a young child, and the way the church stepped up to support not just myself but my family. My father passed away when I was very young, and so just I felt like this calling to always want to give back to the church, and combined that with my love for teaching. So I went to Concordia University, Nebraska, go Bulldogs,
Yes.
where I got a K through 12 music education degree. So I got to be a part of that music program and learn from those wonderful professors. So that's what I was going to do. I was going to be a music teacher. I wanted to be that cool music teacher that was at one school and was there for decades and would have concerts where alumni would come back and sing all the songs. They just had this beautiful vision, right?
Yeah.
It's what every girl like pencils in their diary. And so I remember doing that and taking my first call down in New Orleans for a few years, and then in Alexandria, Virginia, for a couple of years as well. And in both of those situations, I was blessed with the opportunity to build brand new programs. And that's a little different. They don't teach you at school how to start a program from
Right.
scratch. And it's really draining. I only taught for 6 years, but it felt like double or triple that, just because of all the learning that had to go into it, not only for me as a teacher, but educating those around me and the families that I was interacting with. Like, what does it mean to have music in a Lutheran school and was such a blessing. And but I got burned out pretty quickly, is what
Mhm.
I found. And I remember growing up that I always just had this idea that you served the church as a teacher, a deaconess, a pastor, DCE, kind of our traditional vocations, which are all very good, right, and salutary.
Sure.
But that's the mindset that I had. And I remember in 2013 going to the LCMS youth gathering in San Antonio. I was working for the youth ministry office for that gathering, and I had just announced that I was going to take a step back from ministry. And I was overwhelmed by the love and support that people that I know, people that I didn't know very well, who came up to me and just said, I heard about that. I'm really sorry that you're feeling burned out and, praying for you. And so I was so grateful for that because I was scared. I really thought like my vocation, I've always just wanted to get back to the church. What do I do now? I felt very
Right.
lost. And so one of those people that interacted with me was President Brian Friedrich, who's now at Concordia St. Paul, but
Right.
was at Concordia, Nebraska at the time. And of course, he was like, "Okay, that's fine that you want to take a step back, but you can still serve the church." And I was like, "What does this mean?" And a good
Right.
old Lutheran question. And after
Right.
a few conversations and a plane ride or so later, about 10 days after the gathering, I accepted a call to serve at Concordia, Nebraska as their director of student development. And that was really the first time to kind of step out in faith outside of a traditional vocation and yet learn how to serve the church in this wonderful way. It still got me connected to young people. I love working with young people. And it was amazing. So I got to spend 6 years there. And I soon realized I'm doing all of this with a music education degree. Those two really don't add up together. I should probably go back to school, which as a teacher is actually not one of my favorite things, but I did it anyway. So you should go back to school if you need to. And I got my MBA. So, being able to add that business degree, add that administration, I put some emphasis in leadership and team management, which is more aligned to what I was doing. It really kind of broadened my skills. And gave me a desire to want to serve in a large way. And when you say, okay, God, what's next, he always has an answer. And I thought it would just be to stay at Seward, but he had other plans. And so I received a call from LCF to serve in this new position for the Organization of Synod Relations. And been here now almost 7 years. By the time you hear this, it'll be 7 years since being there. So that's kind of my long journey to it. And it's been such a blessing, again, that God has shown the many ways that you can serve the church. And for me, that 4-year-old girl, that 6-year-old girl, that 7-year-old girl, by the time my dad passed, who said, I just want to give back to the church and serve it, he's answered that prayer in a way that I couldn't even fathom.
Right.
Because now I'm in a financial institution, which is
Right.
very different than what we think about when we think about the work of the church.
Right.
But it's a gift that God has given us, the gift of finance and stewardship. And so being able to incorporate my faith, being able to incorporate still work with young people, which is huge for me, has just been a blessing in this role. So that's a really long answer, but
No, that's perfect. And I think, just mo many adults I think can relate to we have this dream, right? That we're going to do this thing. And then perhaps we do it and then we realize actually God has other things for us to do in addition, right? Maybe that are very different. I have a very similar story in teaching and loved teaching and didn't plan to leave teaching. But definitely am glad that God had a bigger plan, right?
right.
And led me in a different way now, right? As
Yeah.
here at Y for Life. It is amazing when you look back, when you're able to look back on your life and see God's hand at work, right? Guiding you in different areas. And I think that's encouraging for our young people to know that. I know there's a lot of pressure when, having been a high school teacher for many years, a lot of pressure to make decisions about the rest of your life when you're 18 years old. And it's okay to make decisions and realize that those decisions might change, right?
Right. Well, one of the things that I learned, especially while I was working at Nebraska, is I got to do a lot of work with our career services. And this was, about a decade or so ago. But even then, right, the average person changes entire careers 7 times in their life.
Yeah.
And a lot of colleges now say, and I still say this to young people that I talk to, it's actually better to go into college with an open mind. And as you're looking at colleges, to really say, how do they train the overall person
Right.
with skill sets? How do they hone in on certain skill sets because they're so transferable? And there are things like if you know you're going to end up in the sciences, or even things in the media and communications, even. There are jobs that when you start your freshman year that haven't even been created yet. And
Right.
so who are we to limit God in those ways? And I think about where I am today and the skills that even when I was 4 years old that I knew I was good at, which was teaching.
Hmm.
I'm still doing it, right?
Right.
But I
Right.
just didn't have the concept of what it could actually be today. But
Yep.
I've always been able to continue to nurture and curate and learn um, those skills throughout all the roles that I've had. And so it's like, okay, God, you told me what my skills were, and then you just got to shape me in those ways. But I'm still doing those gifts and talents that you gave me right away. So
Right.
just being open to the wide, vast variety of skills that and positions that God can place you in with those skills is awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And the skills grow and the skills, some of them will change, right? And
Right.
that's really cool too. When God brings to light something new that you didn't realize. Oh wow, I can do this, right?
Yes. Yes.
So tell me about the average day in the life of the Synod Relations Director at LCEF. What does that look like?
Yeah. So again, going back to teaching, one of the reasons why I was a music teacher was because I loved the constant change. Going from classroom to classroom or having different grade levels come to me. No music day was the same because I had to work in 90-minute blocks or 30-minute blocks depending on the class. And so no 2 days are the same with LCEF as well. But the majority of the work that I do gets to be in relationship. Again, interacting with people, something I love to do, as you know.
Mhm.
And so I get to work on different opportunities to connect with people who could be using our services, which is everybody. And so for me, I particularly have a passion with our church workers as I think about where I was when I graduated from Nebraska. There were things I wish I knew about taking care of my finances, being a good steward, thinking about the future that I just didn't know back then. And so trying to translate that to workers today is something that I love doing. So looking for those opportunities with working with all the Concordias as well as our seminaries. And then I get to work with all of our large institutions in Synod, and then a lot of our organizations like Y for Life and others to help support the work that they're doing and see ways that we can incorporate our message together. So lots of phone calls, lots of emails, lots of planning and organizing, and lots of travel involved. So even this morning, I was up making sure I have all my travel plans set for the next couple of weeks, because you never want to land somewhere and realize you forgot to get a rental car. So,
Right.
which has happened to me before. So I'm always trying to double check travel plans. But yeah, my day never really looks the same, but kind of consists of those types of things.
Sure. Lots of flexibility, but lots of people. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of people.
So we're talking about people, and you actually alluded to it, upholding others, right? Upholding their lives. What is unique? How do you uniquely uphold the lives of others? And you can take it from the public relations perspective, or the LCEF, more financial perspective, or what I really love is to hear kind of both sides. So
Yeah.
how does that work? How do you uphold life, right? How are you
Yeah.
uniquely prepared?
Yeah, so I mean, I think as Christians and citizens of this world, it's important, especially as Lutherans, to be bold about what we are and who we are and what we care about. And so for me, I've always had a love, even when I was teaching. Whenever I had a sad day or a frustrating class, I'd go to the kindergarten classroom because, man, those kindergartners always have joy. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the sugar, maybe it's whatever, all the activities at kindergarten. But, I just think about how much I've learned from those. I mean, we often say like older and wiser, and yes, that's very true, but I've learned so many things from my students, even today, that I'm blessed to get to encounter, who are younger than me, are some of my closest friends. And so I'm so grateful for young people in general. And that goes from infants, from birth to death. And I think that's super important. And at LCEF, that's really incorporated when we think about stewardship and how we provide ways to be good stewards. We have things from birth to death. And so, to try and reflect the life of the church, we talk about that in all of our services, is that it's important to reflect the life of the church. And so we want to include all people, and no matter the age, and incorporating that teaching aspect of how you can give and save and serve at the same time, that those two can go together, to save and serve. So what does that look like? Personally, Wife for Life and Lutherans for Life has always been an integral part of my life. I haven't shared this very much, but I think about my own life. I share that my father passed away when I was young, so realizing mortality at such a young age has always been it has changed the way I view life and how important everyone's life is to me. I also, have shared in a few smaller circles my grandmother when she was pregnant. It was not a wanted pregnancy,
Mhm.
and she tried to abort, and it was unsuccessful. And because of that, my mom was born, right?
Yeah.
And so I can trace that to there and find out, man, the series of God's hand through that to be here. And my grandmother obviously has no regrets, and she was at a just a scary part of her life as a
Right.
young
Right.
person then, but to now be on the other side of that, and the beautiful relationship that her and my mom had, and me and her and my mom had until her passing, is just wonderful. So life for me has always been very precious, very open and candid about it. In our family, we lightly but truthfully kind of talk about death too, in the beautifulness of it, because we've all experienced it, but it's the joy that we get to have through that. And so through all of that, I think that's really been important. I'm in my 40s now, and so many friends around me have been dealing with infertility
Yeah.
and just that adoption journey. I've been blessed to know so many people who have adopted, and able to just hear more about that. And I think that's an important part of young people for understanding life, especially in our social media age. I go back to what I started at the beginning, being bold to talk about it. I think as
Mhm.
young people is just huge. There's so much counter narrative right now, that's easy to latch on to.
Right.
And the world is a scary place. And so to be
Right.
bold is so, so important, to
Yeah.
uphold life.
and to be equipped to speak that truth in love, right? I think you phrased it beautifully. Your grandmother was in a scary place, and that's what we encounter, right? With women who consider abortion, it's because they are scared very often. They don't feel that they have any other choice, right? They're not sure that they'll be supported. Very often, that decision is made in fear, right? And if we recognize that, then we know how to lean in and to support those lives. And thanks be to God, right?
Mhm.
That abortions don't work all the time, and what a beautiful example of how God redeemed that, right,
Mhm.
for you and for your family. What a wonderful gift that you are to LCEF that can speak to what it means to be a church worker and what it means to have experienced life issues and to uphold the lives of others. You've hinted at a couple of times and actually, talked about it a little bit about how in saving we also can give, right, through LCEF. So can you define for us maybe what stewardship is? And then how can that be a life-affirming concept, right? I mean, typically when we think about money, we think about Bible verses like that do not speak highly of
Right.
money, right? Let's
Yeah.
I won't bring those up,
Right.
but we all know, right? And so
Mhm.
how can actually money be used to uphold life?
Yeah, I appreciate that question because it is, whenever I'm talking, I always say, we hear the word stewardship, and I've been guilty of this too. You can always tell, like, oh, it's Stewardship Sunday. Like, you can hear those key words in pastor's sermon. That's like, it's all leading to that commitment card, right? And the
Yeah.
big C, commitment card. But it's not just that, right?
Right.
It's understanding that finances, that this is something that God has given us, right? We
Right.
often think about time, talent, and treasure, right? And the treasure being the finances that God has given us. And I think because of sin, and which is acknowledged in the Bible, that money can be the root of all evil. That it has its kind of taintedness to it. But God directs us to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and render unto God what is God. And so at LCF, that is what we are trying to be a good steward of, is that there are many gifts that we are given, including finances. And when using finances, I love one of our teams especially always uses this guiding question: what is God calling us to do? So, what is God calling us to do with the finances? And if that is the leading question with that, I think that helps shape not only our mindset, but also our heart into what we do and how we serve. How is this building showing and sharing God to those around us? How is it showing and sharing God to us, right? If you took a moment and I just gave you a moment to just close your eyes and think of the most beautiful, church you've ever been to, right? It's the stained glass, it's the beautiful dark wood, and the intricacy of the woodwork. Maybe it's the smell of the pine. It's all of these senses, right? That invoke and recall us to God, and in that space give us that opportunity to worship. And so as we think about the things that money can do, it's a beautiful thing. And so let's have that mindset to do that. So when I think of stewardship, it is taking my treasures, my finances, and giving them back to God in the most beneficial way, right? And it's a balance, right? I think about the second article of the creed, which I'm that Lutheran nerd that really loves the creed of Luther's
Good.
catechism, right? clothing and shoes, house and home, wife, land, and all that I have, that he daily gives me all that I need to support this body and life, right? So we need our fruits and our vegetables. So as we think about our finances, it is the monetary things that we need to support this body and life. And then we also divide that up into what we need to benefit the church, to the mercy work that he's called us to give. And so that's really stewardship for
Mhm.
me. And as we talk about it at LCF, what is that? And so what I love about our services is, there are lots of financial institutions all throughout the world that anyone can work alongside with. But in the world, secularly speaking, it's just a very black and white thing,
Right.
right? The
Right.
ministry is so gray because it involves people and relationships. And so to understand why certain things need to happen within the church, a Wells Fargo, a Capital One, your local Union Bank may not understand, but we understand why certain things need to be that way, how we can even glorify God more through what we're doing. And so we're able to walk alongside people in the gray of ministry as well, and really provide that wraparound service. So I love that idea and that concept, and to see that in play with the churches and schools and individuals that we're blessed to work with.
Yeah, yeah. Christians see money different than the world does, right? In that we know where that money comes from. It is a blessing from God. And as our cup overflows, right? And even when it doesn't overflow, we also have the opportunity to use that gift to uphold others, to serve others, right? And I know that you help church workers, you help churches. It is interesting when we look at early at Christians who came to America, kind of early on, what did they build? Often they built churches, right? They
Mhm.
built churches together, sometimes even before they built their own homes.
Right.
And you're right, when you look at like the intricacy and the details of churches, where you put your money, that very much displays where your love is and
Mhm.
what you value most. And it's just what a confession those who built churches in old days and even today make in the faith, right? But also in the recognition that this church building will serve the church body for
Right.
generations to come,
Right,
right?
right. Yeah, yeah. I know, there's that phrase, this is our temporary home, and we often think of it like as earth, but I often, like, in my mind, it is actually the church is my
Yeah, right.
temporary home, right? And so I think it's important that we use, again, our treasures to make that as glorifying to God as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I had kind of asked everyone who I've worked with, right? So each vocation has some difficulties, right?
Mhm.
Each vocation has hardships because we live in a broken, sinful world.
Right,
And so no job, no vocation, no relationship. And that's really what vocations are. They're the relationships that God places us in to serve. Um, none of those are going to be perfect. Can you
right,
think of a time at LCEF or a hardship or something that was hard, maybe not even for you, maybe for somebody that LCF was serving, right? Maybe a church that was difficult and God worked through that difficulty and transformed it for good. Can you think of
right.
anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think several things come to mind. I always like to remember, like I was just saying, we live in the gray and ministry, and one of the things that puts us in the gray is people in that relationship that goes, and the more people that there are, the more relationships that there are, and people are the best, and sometimes people are the worst of an opportunity, right? It's the
Right.
same side, it's two sides of the same coin in that regard. So there's certainly been those moments within, my work that I can love and be very frustrated with the same person, sometimes within the same beat of a moment, in the work that we're doing together. So I think we certainly encountered that. Um, and then within this kind of broken world, there's times where we don't always reach out for help in time, right? And
Right.
so in our world, in the LCF world, there is, even though we get to be in the gray, we have to recognize the black and white of finance and the constructs of the laws that are around, right? So there have sometimes sadly been ministries that have reached out at the very dire end of a financial struggle, that we will do everything we can until we can't, right? There's a point where, as we look at that and as we step back, we still ask the question, where is God leading? And sometimes that answer is to stop, to say this project, this place maybe does not, can't can't sustain itself, right? Maybe it needs to rethink what it is. Maybe it needs to pivot entirely. We've had projects that have had to pivot 360 degrees, and that can be a really tough conversation because we're Lutherans, and the good old joke of Lutherans don't like change is most certainly true sometimes. And so we're at a place, LCF, what I love too about them is we're thinking about the church of today and tomorrow. And so we are hoping to help the church move as we think about the young people like those listening today, where's the church going for them? How can we be there and support them so that physical structures are sustained, but financial stability is there and all of those things too. And so sometimes that's hard. Those are hard conversations to have with ministries who may be very tied to a building, a piece of glass, that one pew that they've always sat in, and so what does that look like? So that's often a challenging thing, and yet we see God's provision through it all, right? We've seen people step in miraculous ways, communities stepping in when they hear that a church or school is in dire straits. And we've also been on the other side where we've seen a facility close, and a beautiful thing is put in its place, right? How does it continue to give to God's people, to give to God's community, to make an impact in the world? And so, without, being specific,
Right,
that's
right.
a lot of what we get to see in some of those hardships that turn into beautiful, beautiful moments.
Right. Yeah, I love that transition piece, right? And I think of all the people that I've interviewed have been able to give great experiences or great examples, maybe that's the word I'm looking for,
Yeah.
of this the wonder and God at work, right? How he really does work for his people. So we've spent a minute talking about hard things. What
Right.
about joys? What do you love most about working for LCEF?
Yeah, the people, right. And to go right back to it, the people who challenge, yet you love. And I think for me personally, I am a problem solver, right? And so I love the face, the look, the aha moments that I get to share with someone as I talk about ways that we can help them save and serve. I get to work again with young people, and so having those initial conversations about starting to save now that you're getting ready to graduate and you're so excited to enter into your vocation, whatever that may be. But as much as you're starting it, you also need to think about how it's going to end. How are the things in life? Sin is in the world. What are going to be those things? My car broke down the first year of teaching. That was a unexpected expense for me. And so to be able to talk through that and say, here is a solution to do that is amazing. Or because we get to be in the gray with the ministry, I'll get church workers who come who are in a financial hardship and trying to figure out what they should do to get out of that, to take care of their family, and we're able to provide some sort of resource for them, to be able to give them a home, for instance, for our rostered church workers where they had been rejected by other banks, but we're able to support them. And so for me, I'm blessed to get to see those moments, to give those hugs when I run into people. So, I represent a much larger team of amazing people that I'm blessed to work with, but I get to be out there. And so there's so often that I get a hug that's really meant for a coworker who was the
Sure.
person that got them over the finish line, but they see LCEF and they're just so grateful. So many prayers that I've had in the middle of a convention exhibit hall, so many tears. And that brings me such great joy to get to help because I was helped, right? I've always said I'm a village kid. It takes a whole village to have raised me and still raise me. I still lean very much on a village. I'm a very open book. Way too many people know more about me than I know about myself, and that's how I like it. And so I love being a village kid and think, man, my village has helped me in so many ways. It's so fulfilling to be in someone's village and get to help them. And so that's one of the greatest joys that I have. And that's what keeps me going, even
Yeah.
when it's very tiring, fourth flight of the week or whatever it may
Right.
be. I'm just
Right.
like, okay, but I get to land and I get to see these people, and that makes me so excited.
Yeah. Yeah. People, that is the joy, right? That's the reason we're here is to uphold others and to bring them to Christ.
Right.
What can people do for you? So sometimes being in the public eye can be difficult. Sometimes you do a lot of traveling, that sort of things. If a friend wants to uphold your life, how does that happen?
Yeah, so I think for me it is simply asking, how are you doing? Again, I'm a village kid and I'm an open book. Be prepared for an answer, right? Sometimes you may say, that might have been too much, Rehema, and I'm okay with that. And so I'm really open on who I am and how I'm doing. I would be remiss to say, like, I'm a single person in my 40s, and so that's always a thing. What I've appreciated about the people in my life is that they just include me in, right? So it's not even like third wheeling or fifth wheeling with kids and all of that. It's just being a part of the family. And
Right.
so I love that my friends know that, or that my friends just have an open invitation to that, and their kids are the same way. I just had a text message last night from a good friend of mine. My dog passed away at the end of March here, and so she was reading a book, and it had a picture of a dog, and the dog looked like my dog, and so she
Oh,
wrote my dog's name on the dog's collar in her book and wanted a picture to send to me. So her dad sent it to me. And that just brings me like great joy. Like they all know, like, Miss Rahema loves dogs. She also loves Golden Girls. She also loves WWE wrestling, like all of these things. And they just embrace it all, embrace me for who I am. And so I'm just so grateful for that. And yeah, so I always tell people that. And prayer, the power of prayer is just always amazing. I know that there's so many people that are praying for me as I do for others. So that's great. And
yeah.
then I think the last thing is connection. I think you were just saying that, like, God created us to be in fellowship with one another, and there's no phone that's going to ever take that away, or social media platform that will ever take that away. And so, my love language is physical touch. So, I give lots of hugs and high fives.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people take me up on that. So
That's right.
it's amazing. It's amazing. They're filling my cup without even knowing it.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing about community, right?
Yes.
It is the opportunity to fill cup and it's not that hard, right?
Mm,
Like a high five is not hard to give.
no, it's not at all. It's not at all. And I think, yeah, I think that's I mean, for anybody in that is or in any sort of role, right, in your vocation is understanding the world around you and doing what you need to do to take care of yourself, right? So there are times that I need to shut my brain off. For, I know some people may follow me like on social media, like I do season tickets to the theater. And so about once a month, I get to shut my brain off, be entertained by music, which
Yeah.
connects me to my passion. And it's awesome. I go by myself. I take myself out to dinner where I'm often in prayer a lot. I mean, I'm not in a traditional prayer, but as I'm eating, that's when I'm having my conversation with God and checking in on some things, wrestling through some things, reflecting on many things, and stuff. And then to just get to sit in a theater. The lights are off, so nobody's looking at me.
Right.
Nobody cares what I'm wearing. I don't have to perform or speak or anything at all. It's an amazing, hour and a half of my life that just kind of recharges me. And often I drive home in like silence and just use that as a calming evening to boost me into the next season of life. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's unique. I didn't know you loved going to those to
yeah,
professional musicals and yeah,
yeah,
I'm a big fan as well. So
yes,
with a
yes.
background in drama. Um,
Hmm.
how about LCEF? What can we do to support? I mean, LCEF does a lot to give back, and there are a lot of services that support. How can we share the news so that
Right.
others know?
Right. So, obviously for young people, we offer different ways to start saving. It's really important as you think about being a good steward. And so often, I think as young people, we don't always think about saving to also include the church to tithing. And so that should be a part of it, not just saving up for the new bike or for college or, wherever you are in life at your age. So please feel free to learn more about the different ways that you can save. And what I love about the relationship, if you don't know about LCF, the way it works is all banks use people's money towards the other projects and use that to lend and things like that. But at LCEF, because we were created by the LCMS, we only use funds to give back to the church. That's the only way we're allowed to lend is to LCMS churches, schools, and organizations. So it's a beautiful thing that if you are 7 years old or 17 years old or 27 and so on and so forth, when you're giving back, if you drive by a church and you see that there's construction going, your money is helping that church be able to build. My church right now is working on construction, and so for me, I did fill out that commitment card, which I'm so grateful to give directly. But I also know that I'm saving with LCEF, and so because I'm one of those people, I'm also giving back to my church directly through that. I'm also
Right.
giving back to Concordia, Nebraska, who has used us for their new music building and new business center and all of those things. And I mean, the list goes on and on. And so it's this beautiful way to serve the church, impact the church without even knowing it. So, I would encourage listeners to check out lcef.org to learn more. Or I don't know if you'll put my contact
Yeah.
information or whatever that is, they can reach out directly. But it's important to save and learn about that. And then it's amazing to see how God works through that, that fellowship of bringing our funds together, how we get to impact the church at large. That's why LCF was created, was to come together and use funds to make a bigger impact.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And we'll include your information. In fact, if you want to, what would be the best way for people to contact you?
Yeah, so they could just email me. So it'll be my first name, Rehema, dot my last name, Kavugha,
Mhm.
which my name will be in the bio, and
Right.
at lcef.org. Or
Right.
if you call the 800 number and ask to speak to me, they'll transfer you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a couple more questions that I've asked each person, and
Okay.
so I want to make sure that I give you the opportunity to answer those last two as well. So, if you could pinpoint one life issue that you think we should keep an eye on, maybe because it is new or quickly growing, or it's affecting people in a different way, what would it be?
Yeah, again, I think for me and thinking about young people, but as the season of life of adoption for me,
Yeah.
and the people that I know is so it's so new in many ways because this correlates to women's health. And I'm a person that, although I've not had children, I've dealt with a lot of women health issues personally. And I know that if I tried to have children right now, it'd be very difficult for me.
Sure.
So, this idea of adoption, I think, has become much bigger or maybe more well known because of so much impact that women are having to their health.
Mm.
And I should caveat it to say women have always had health issues.
Yeah.
It's now actually being just a more predominant and more known. And yet at the same time, can be a struggle because a lot of testing that used to be done on medicine and things like that were only traditionally done on men. And so there's still a big gap on the unknown about women's health. And so there's so often I've encountered, again, friends and other women that I've run into as I speak in young women's spaces who share just some sad stories of not even knowing, of being perfectly, quote, perfectly healthy women and yet having trouble in conceiving, and it's so hard because it's something beyond their means that maybe on this side of heaven we will never understand. And so as a woman, what does that look like to say, let's adopt? You know, again, we were created as women to produce children, and so that barrier. And so adoption, I think, is a beautiful thing and can be such a blessing to the many children in this world who aren't raised in a Christian home or to have a mother and a father, and what a blessing you can bring to that. And so I would just encourage young people to learn more, to continue to know that it's okay, and especially if you're a female young person, to know that there may be some things that you may discover about your health later on that could impact that, and that's okay too. That's all part of God's calling. So.
Right. Yeah. He does redeem those realities, right?
Mhm.
In that brokenness, he leans in and heals, and when he cannot heal this side of heaven, there is still hope, right?
Right.
There is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I see that the issue of infertility is rising. There's so many, suppositions as to why, but ultimately, when a woman is faced with that, or a couple is faced with that, really helping them, right?
Yes.
Affirming their lives, being there, listening,
Yes.
rejoicing, and encouraging adoption. I think it's a
Mhm.
wonderful,
Mhm.
God, life affirming option.
Yes.
So last question then, if you could recommend one book or podcast to learn more about maybe a career in finance or public relations or the importance of networking, right? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so I will use this opportunity to plug in LCEF's two podcasts, and I love them because of the duality in which they serve. So on any podcast platform, you can look up Grace Place podcast, and so Grace Place focuses on worker wellness.
Mm.
And this can be the traditional, quote, traditional church worker, but it can be any worker. And not only does it talk about ways to stay well, not just financially, but everything in our wellness wheel, they also, this last season, spent a long time interviewing other resources of places to maybe retreat or programs that you can stay connected with to stay well, right? Sometimes we wait till we are dying, not physically,
Right.
but in all the other ways to get help. But how do we just maintain our overall wellness? There are different programs and people and places that can help you maintain. So they spent the second season doing that as well. So I recommend that one. And then the second one, which is newer for LCF, is called Ministry Moments. And this is with our Ministry Solutions team, which is that group that I was saying really uses the leading question of where is God calling, insert your church, school, or organization to, right? So where is God calling you to? And talking through those ways of doing that. And also, they're a group of pastors, so they also just offer insight on innovative ways to connect young people to church and continue to get them engaged past confirmation, how to deal with stewardship in your congregation, a variety of topics, and they offer, tips and tricks for all of that, and a great open conversation too. And so those are going to be my two podcasts to recommend. And there's so many books
I
I won't
know.
even begin, but I'll at least plug those two podcasts.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us and for sharing with us your passion for serving others, but also giving our youth an opportunity to see how they might be able to serve in the future. So we have your contact information. We'll put that in our notes. And then for those of you who are listening, and then of course also for you, Rehema, God's blessings on your week and your work for life. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for today's life topic. Check out whyforlife.org or email Michelle at whyforlife.org to find out how and when you can go live with us at our next Chats for Life session. Or join us next time right here at Why for Life Podcasts, where youth learn how to be gospel-motivated voices for life.